Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sports Shorts Daily. Ronnie Rants alongside Tommy Krysan, TK over at Court Street Cafe and God's Country, Port Allen, Louisiana, the west side of Baton Rouge, less than 5 minutes from downtown Baton Rouge, right over the bridge. Take your first right and take your second light right, and you're good. First exit, second light, you're good right there. Still, TK will tell us more about Court Street Cafe later on. Of course, I'm in an undisclosed location presented by the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Today, myself, Todd Walker, will be representing the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. We'll be at Oakbourne Country Club in Lafayette for the Boys and Girls Club annual fundraiser golf tournament. We'll actually be working a hole. The little par three. So this is what it is, TK. When you pull up to the hole, you make a donation to the Boys and Girls Club of $100. That $100 donation per team gets you a picture with Todd. It gets you 2 signed, personalized, autographed baseballs from Todd, and he hits with your group. And wherever the ball lands, you're lying zero at the ball. Wherever it lands. If it goes in the water, you're lying zero at the drop spot. So anyway, that'll be today. We'll be raising money for the Boys and Girls Club out there. Looking forward to it. And of course, we're presented by LeBear's Casino, where it was rocking and rolling all weekend long at the new ESPN Bets Sportsbook at LeBear's in Baton Rouge. Lots of folks watching. Of course, LSU on Saturday night and the Saints on Sunday and all the NFL games. The ESPN Sportsbook was popping all weekend long. You should go check it out. All right, TK, a lot to get to. One, both the Saints and the Tigers win over the weekend. We're not going to probably say that a whole lot this year. I wouldn't expect. But the Tigers win and you feel a little oogie about it. The Saints win and you feel really good about it. Let's start with the Tigers on Saturday. I know all of us on Sports Shorts Radio liked Nichols to cover the 51, and then by kickoff it was 47. That was the easiest cover in the history of LSU Nichols. But what was your big takeaway from the game?
My big takeaway is they couldn't run the football. I really thought they would come out, run the football, and just pound it. And they weren't able to do that. Pass protection was good, but running the football, and you got to believe, Nichols' line probably wasn't as good as Southern Cal's. You couldn't run the ball against Southern Cal, but I said, okay, they'll blow that up against Nichols. And Nichols is a good team. Tim Rebo does a good job. There's some talented kids on that team. But LSU's supposed to be able to run the football against Nichols, and they were not able to do it. That was my big takeaway. And then the defense is an all or nothing thing. It's either 3 and out, and they're looking really good, and they gang tackling, and they fly into the ball, or Nichols is dinking and dunking them with a quarterback that's barely 6 foot tall. He didn't get sacked, I don't believe. He's dinking and dunking them, and then Guggenheim, who's been a running back at Nichols, seems like forever. Kid just runs hard, and he goes 67 yards because Major Burns goes the wrong way from the star position. So, there was a lot to be cleaned up against a South Carolina team who looked good, demolishing Kentucky the other day. And now it's a 11 o'clock kick. ESPN game day is going to be at Columbia for some reason. I can't believe there's not another more attractive game. They were supposed to go to Georgia, Kentucky, but they whacked it because Kentucky got whacked by South Carolina. But LSU was an 8.5 point favorite. Now it's already 7.5. Unfortunately, in the Nichols game, LSU loses the defensive tackle Guillory, who they were really counting on this year. Torn Achilles tendon, done for the year. So I don't know. More disappointing question marks about LSU football than good stuff from the win over Nichols.
Jacoby and Guillory, the Alexandria native. I mean, what a sad thing. The guy, one of their top defensive linemen, he's out. And look, this is an LSU defensive line that didn't really have a lot of great defensive linemen. They just had numbers this year. They were figuring that the safety was in the numbers, that they could just rotate players in. They had a little more depth than they had a year ago. This is going to be a gigantic loss. This is 2 weeks in a row now. You had Emory last week, who's a 6-year running back, and whatever. I assume he's going to come back next year. I would assume Guillory's going to come back next year, although Guillory's probably a little harder to come back from than Emory's. Although the Achilles tendon, they've found there was a doctor in LA that's kind of discovered a little bit of a solution to recovery. And that's why you're seeing guys like Aaron Rodgers, who'll be playing tonight on Monday Night Football, coming back from these injuries a lot better than they used to. So hopefully, Jack Marucci and his staff will, that'll get to that point. But still, this is bad news. You got two players that were going to contribute mightily to LSU this year out week 1 and week 2, a running back and now a defensive lineman, and both positions that you don't have a ton of depth. And the defensive line, Guillory, probably even worse off than losing Emery. So, not good. It's interesting. I agree with you, Tommy. This is it. LSU with one and one LSU, who's looked not great in the first 2 weeks, taking on a surprise South Carolina team, and that's where game day is going to be. I guess their thought process is, hey, we don't get to go to South Carolina very often. We need to take advantage of it while we can. And so that's not good news for LSU fans, because that means the place will have a little extra juice. It'll be extra jumping as if it needed it. And oh, by the way, it'll be a noon start, not 11 a.m. like we'll have here. It'll be a noon start Eastern time. And I wonder, it's going to be weird to see. I wonder if they'll show old Paul Maneri in the booth or on the sideline or something like that, because Paul will be
But
wearing
maybe
his
he's
South
the
Carolina
guest.
green.
Is he going to be the guest picker? Maybe.
I don't know about that.
I,
I don't know if he.
I don't
I don't
think
know if he
he's
holds.
raced that high.
Yeah, I don't think he's got national cred for that, but it'll be interesting. Paul is going to be feeling weird, I can assure you, knowing him the way we do. This is going to be awkward for him, because he's probably going to have lots of family and friends at the game, visiting with them all weekend long. His heart is with LSU, but his checkbook is with the South Carolina Gamecocks. So you can't blame him for pulling for South Carolina in this one. But getting back to the Tigers on Saturday, they opened this coming Saturday against South Carolina. They opened up the 8.5. Now it's 7.5. Tommy.
Yeah, it went down 7.5. And I don't know if it's going to move anymore going forward this week. But Ryan, when I saw 8.5, I was surprised that it was that high.
Right.
Okay, I didn't think South Carolina would be favored. I'm thinking, they're thinking 3, 4, maybe 5 because it's in Columbia. But maybe the extra juice of ESPN Game Day brought it down a point. I don't know, but it was high when I first saw it. I was surprised that it was that high, based on the fact that they could not run the ball for 2 weeks in a row now. And I guess we'll find out come Saturday morning. Don't forget now. With that being said, I want to remind folks that this coming Saturday, Sports Shorts Radio will be 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Got to fix that graphic. 9 to 11 from the sports book, the ESPN sports book in at La Bears, with the different kickoff time. We'll be doing it that way. So there we go. 9 to 11 a.m. this Saturday morning. Derry Beckwith and I will be in the house. Ronnie will be on the phone. Joel Davis, Hunter McCann. We'll have a bang-up show. We had fun out at Fat Daddy's in Plaquemine last Saturday. And this Saturday, moving on the clock a little bit, 9 to 11.
I got to tell you, with Guillory being out, one of the LSU's top defensive linemen out for the year now, and then with the way South Carolina played on the road in Kentucky and dominated the Wildcats, and the way that LSU was so lackluster against Nichols, and the defense looks to just be mediocre. The offense, as the second week in a row, not able to run the ball like LSU fans expected this year. How can you not like South Carolina getting 7.5? Because Tigers winning by a touchdown. Okay, but that I like that half. I like that extra, because there's no reason to believe that LSU is going to go in there and dominate. Obviously, you hope they do, but if you're a Tiger fan, but there's no reason to believe an early morning game on the road. When has LSU really played well in that scenario? So. And they're going to have some extra juice in a big way. So looking forward to that. The South Carolina win over Kentucky. I know Hunter McCann lost that one pretty big on the weekend. He liked Kentucky. I think Kentucky was what, 8.5, 9.5 point favorite against South Carolina?
8.5, yeah.
Yeah.
He also liked the under at LSU. That didn't work either.
Yeah. Well, he liked the under. You and I were both on Nichols.
Brian, full disclosure, I bet 3 college games Saturday, 3 NFL games yesterday. The only thing I got right was Nichols plus 49, which was what it was when I bet. So TK 1-5 on the weekend. It
Yeah.
can only get better, I hope.
Yeah, you made me lose that Alabama first half bet too. You know,
Yeah,
you
well,
jumped in there like, all right, I'll go on with TK. Please don't ever say that again. We're over the Alabama first half line.
I
That
know
makes me
I'm
mad.
now over it for sure
Yeah,
because they
yeah.
didn't even come close.
Speaking of Alabama, they survived and advanced against South Florida. Now, okay, this kind of looked like the Alabama team that maybe we thought we might see. But listen, Alabama and South Florida struggled. You know, Alabama struggled against South Florida 2 years ago. You know, with Nick Saban as the coach, they barely survived. So you know, doesn't necessarily mean anything. But this was surprising at home. That game a couple years ago was down in Tampa. This one was at home. They survived and advanced barely against South Florida. Uh, some other games that were a shocker. Notre Dame. I know this just tickles you because you can't stand Notre Dame.
Well, they paid 1.4 million to lose to Northern Illinois. Great interview with the coach from Northern Illinois after the game. He got all emotional. It went viral, and he just about talking about his kids, his players, and that was cool. But it just seems Notre Dame always has that game every year when you go, wait a minute, like last year was with Marshall, and it just doesn't work for them. And this was at home. This was at Notre Dame, so. They lose to Northern Illinois, biggest win in the history of Northern Illinois football. So, that's all good for them. They'll be flying high. Probably bet against them next week. Be a good idea. But no,
First time.
Notre Dame. Just I wish the voters would just start putting them like 23rd, 24th, and then if they earn their way up, do it. But it's just they're just not as good as the voters and the AP and the coaches think they are.
First time a MAC team has ever beaten a top five AP poll team. And look, it came the week after Notre Dame looked so good on the road against Texas A&M. You know, a tough place to go down south on the road. A&M's expected to be a good team this year, and Notre Dame takes care of business. So they're feeling good about themselves. Go back to South Bend and bam, lay an egg against Northern Illinois. Southern Cal, they did their part. They look good. The week after LSU, Lincoln Riley's team probably gained a lot of confidence with that LSU win.
Another big one on the weekend. Texas just manhandled Michigan. I mean, that was not a game. I mean, that was what Notre Dame thought they were going to do to Northern Illinois, just manhandle them. They did not have. I thought LSU would manhandle Nichols. They didn't, but Texas hitting on all cylinders looked very, very good in the big house against Michigan. Just completely one-sided game. Texas even jumped Ohio State from 3-2 in one of the polls because people were impressed with the win at the big house. But I don't know how many games Michigan's going to win as we
Yeah.
go forward. That's the question. What will happen to a lot of these teams going forward, and it's going to be wild and crazy.
Speaking of Michigan, Jim Harbaugh and his first game in the NFL, back in the NFL with the Chargers, they beat the Raiders. So Jim Harbaugh, weird dude, strange guy. I don't, he's always been that way. Leaves a burn pile of rubble over there in Michigan. Yeah, they won a national championship, but it's kind of like they sold their soul to get it. And hey, that's
They
fine. I mean,
did.
if you
They
told
did.
LSU fans, you know, 20 years ago. Remember LSU won a national championship in the late 50s, didn't win another one until 03. If you'd have told LSU fans, you and I talked about this. You remember LSU won 5 national championships in baseball in the 90s, and many LSU fans said, "Hey, I would trade all 5 of those for one football." And but Michigan's doing that right now. You got your one, but you're going to now be on probation. You're now going to be not very good for a couple of years. So you got to earn your way back. And I think we're going to see that with them. But Jim Harbaugh got a win over the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders are going to win a ton of games with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. They only scored 10 points. But the story of the day was twofold. One, it was the Patriots beating the Bengals 16-10, and Joe Burrow only scoring 10 points. And it was the New Orleans Saints who were a 4-point favorite against the Panthers at home. Now, the Panthers are expected to be terrible, and they will be after watching that game. But the Saints were up 30-3 at halftime, and what was just a bizarre game. Arguably, I think the top 5 best half the Saints have ever played in the history of their franchise.
Saints look like Super Bowl contenders, and the Super Bowl is in New Orleans. I had a friend that texted me that. The good news is the Super Bowl is in New Orleans. I said, well, the bad news is that's the Carolina Panthers on the other side of the ball. But you got to credit Derek Carr. He looked good. Jimmy Johnson pointed out at halftime, nobody threw more touchdowns in the last 4 games of the season last year than Derek Carr in the NFL. And now here he comes out with three, and very, 19 for 23, whatever it was. He looked very good. Alvin Kamara looked great catching the ball, running the ball. Carr threw it to 8 different people. Offensive line, which was a question mark, did a fine job, I guess you got to say. They'll grade all that today. Saints really, really looked good. The dome was rocking. It was packed. And again, it was Carolina, who you and I talked about before we rolled tape this morning. They might not win more than 2 or 3 games this year, but that doesn't matter. It's still an NFL team. And that margin between the good NFL team and the bad NFL team is a lot thinner than the college margin between real good teams and real poor teams. There's still only 32 NFL teams, and those guys get paid, and they're NFL players. They're on a roster. But the Saints dominated. I mean, up 30-0, 30-3 at half. They just never looked back. That game was never in doubt. The old saying, hey, if you bet on the Saints, you were in the rocking chair early. For that game, no question about it. I bet Carolina on the money line. That was another one of my bad bets for the weekend. So, and a friend of mine had Carolina in the first half. So, no, I may not bet this coming week. I may take a week off. But the Saints look very good. There's no other way to say it. Now, next Sunday, they'll play in Dallas against a Dallas team that looked pretty good. Prescott's now the highest paid player in the NFL, at least for a couple of days. A couple of weeks ago, the highest paid cornerback, changed within 24 hours. But they got to go play the Cowboys. They're 6.5-point dogs in Dallas, 12 noon kick. That may be the game of the week next week in the NFL with Dak Prescott. He looked good. It's the Cowboys. A lot of, whether people like them or hate them, there's a lot. They moved the needle a little bit. And then the Saints with their impressive win. I'll be real curious to see how that unfolds in Dallas this week.
Yeah, we all thought that the Saints would win against Carolina in Week 1. I know you have them going 1-4 in their first 5 games. We'll see how for real they are. The good news is they came out of this thing healthy. They literally called the dogs off. They put Hayner in to play quarterback the last 6-7 minutes of that game, and just pretty much handed the ball off in the fourth quarter. So this was an easy 47-10 win for the Saints. They got to be playing with a lot of confidence. And the biggest thing is their kicker. My God. 57, 52, 44, 30 something. Just incredible. Just everything was, you could not have played him. Tyrann Mathieu had a strip fumble. He forced the fumble and recovered it. Just incredible.
Well, the kicker was 5 for 5 on extra points, 4 for 4 on field goals, and then did the job on the kickoff, everything. There was a kickoff ran back for a touchdown yesterday. I want to say by Arizona. Somebody busted through a seam or whatever. But a lot of people still not used to that new quick kickoff thing, although returns are up. Last year, 22% of all kickoffs were returned. So far, 33% over the weekend. Small snapshot from Thursday to Sunday, but there are more returns. But as was pointed out on the Saints broadcast, the Saints special teams guy was one of the guys who worked closely with the NFL on coming up with this and tweaking it a little bit, which they did in the preseason. But the penalties are up. It used to be 25% of all kickoff returns had a penalty. Now it's like 45%. And again, that could be the players not used to it. A different thing for the players, and they're holding and pushing and shoving a little bit more than they normally do. So we'll see how it goes. Keep in mind, that's a 1-year thing. There's no guarantee that they use that next year. I guess they'll determine that when they keep compiling data throughout this season.
Well, I think that they're going to change the kickoff rule forever. It's just how do they tweak it? Because now they're claiming it's a safety issue. They don't want to have 250-pound men running full speed, with a 40-yard head start and collide into another guy head on. That's what they're trying to prevent.
The other thing,
go down that road, you're never going to go back to the way it was. You may tweak it, but it's not going to go back to the way it was.
Well, the other thing that I saw yesterday, game we were watching, by the way, Jaden Daniels did okay, scored a couple of rushing touchdowns for Washington, but the Commanders had to announce an onside kick. They had to let everybody know they were doing it. The kicker was Cade York. He's the LSU guy. They had to announce the onside kick. You got to tell everybody when you're doing it. And of course, it did not work. Didn't even come close to working. But that occurred in that Washington game against Tampa. They were down like 15 or 16 fourth quarter. They scored to make it 15 or 16. And then you saw the coach, Dan Quinn, went to the refs, said, we're kicking an onside kick. So it's different. We'll see how it goes in the future.
17 for 24, 17 for 24, 188, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He was sacked twice. That was Jade Daniels' line, and that loss on the road in Tampa. Tampa
I'll tell
looked
you
good.
what, he was. Yeah, Mayfield looked good. But the other thing about Daniels, I watched that game. He kind of like at first at LSU, he tucks it and runs in a hurry. I mean, if he doesn't see anybody open, first read, second read, maybe a third read, he's taking off. And, so we'll see how much that goes forward. It's just like when Derek Carr put his head down and into somebody yesterday, Mark Schlereth, who I think does a good job announcing 3-time Super Bowl offensive lineman. He said, okay, Derek, you don't need to do that. You don't need to prove to nobody. You can lower your shoulder and hit somebody. It's week 1. Go ahead and slide. And I'm sure that'll get discussed this week by the Saints and Derek Carr.
Speaking of color analysts, Tom Brady made his debut as a color analyst on the NFL yesterday. What was your takeaway?
Mixed reviews. He was a little bit dry. He made some obvious statements. But Ronnie, you and I have never announced an NFL game, but we've done thousands of sports games, whatever sport. It's a little harder to do than some people think. Although in the NFL, when you got a staff of people giving you info and 3 days of study, I would think you should be better than me and you got to all of a sudden go do the Covington Ponchatoula game. We don't know anything about either team. It's a little harder to do. And we still make it happen. But Brady, mixed reviews, a lot of obvious statements, a lot of people taking the Brady side saying, hey, he got better as a quarterback. He'll get better as an announcer if he works at it, if he studies it. Mixed reviews would be the way to say it. Actually, they switched out of the Washington game into the Dallas-Cleveland game. I actually heard about 4 or 5 minutes of game time of him announcing, and it was that. It was dry, straightforward. Now, one time the quarterback dropped back, he started yelling, tight end, like, you're not supposed to do that, okay? That was the quarterback and him seeing that the tight end was open, and the guy on the field is not going to be able to hear it. So it's going to be mistakes. We'll see. Tony Romo, when he started out, he wasn't all that good. Then he became really great, so we'll see.
Well, I feel like Romo started out great and it ended up a little bit
Well, yeah,
weird.
now he's gotten a little
Whereas
weird.
maybe
now.
Tom will go the other way, All right. Well, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to talking on Wednesday because we'll have the SEC is going to have injury reports, which is something new. That when you face another SEC team, you have to have injury reports, which is been doing in the NFL for a long time. Also, we're going to see how Aaron Rodgers looks. I mean, this is a year ago. First this week, right, is when Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles tendon just a few plays into his Jets career. He's back healthy, didn't play in the preseason. So curious to see what he looks like and how he does. Because remember, a lot of expectations were on the Jets last year, and that all went out the window without Aaron. So they'll be playing tonight on Monday Night Football. Looking forward to watching that one.
Yeah, a lot of stuff, and we'll have fun on Wednesday. And then let's hope this storm doesn't affect anyone, but it's going to hit somewhere in Louisiana. So weather could be a little shaky Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but we plan on being here Wednesday morning for Sports Shorts Daily with Brian Kelly will meet with the media today at noon. So we'll see if anything comes out of that. Probably not, but you never know. And then we'll see about getting ready for ESPN Game Day and the Gamecocks in Columbia.
All right, TK, I'm going to let you tell us about Court Street Cafe as I get out of here.
All right, Court Street Cafe, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Of course, I got a nice patio out front. When I arrived here this morning, I had some folks eating their breakfast out on a patio with the cool weather, the very nice weather. What a beautiful day yesterday. Court Street Cafe, steak night every Saturday, a world-famous brunch on Sundays with bottomless mimosas. Jason and the staff do a super job. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. If you connect on Facebook and Instagram, just look for Court Street Cafe, Port Allen. You'll see all the lunch specials, the dinner specials, the weekly specials, the drink specials, and the full-service bar behind me. It's all right here at Court Street Cafe in Port Allen. We want you to check them out real soon. Don't forget to like and share this show. That helps everything involved. We're back Wednesday morning from Tremonti's Meat and Seafood in Baton Rouge. On behalf of Jason here at the Court Street Cafe in Port Allen and Ronnie Rance, I'm Tommy Christ. Have a great day, everyone.